Thank you for joining us for tonight's show. My name is Keiko Agena, and I am one of the new members of Impro Theater Main Company. Now, we recognize the immense challenges that artists and theater companies are still facing in the light of the pandemic. In our mission to spread joy, Impro has been active throughout the pandemic. In addition to our classes going online, we have presented over 350 live streamed shows for free. So I'm here, you guessed it, to ask for your support in our mission. Now, when you support Impro, you are helping us to offset those costs, to expand our programming, to strengthen our community, and to spread joy. And you're not only helping the performances, you're also helping the school, which is a vital, safe, welcoming place for artists of all levels and backgrounds. And we've made it very easy to make a donation. Just go to improtheater.com, click the donate button, or you can go to, you can text it from your phone, text Impro to 44321. That's 44321, text Impro. And we are a nonprofit organization, so it's completely tax deductible. Well, thank you very much for listening to this pitch and for making a donation. And please enjoy the show.
Impro Theater and the cast and crew of this online performance would like to take this time to honor the indigenous peoples of the ancestral and unceded homelands we each inhabit, and to consider the legacy of colonization and its far-reaching effects.
Hey everybody, it's Mike Rock. Welcome to Impro Talk. Very excited about our guest today, Claire Sarah, who is here. Claire, can I do a couple of announcements before we get rolling? Would you mind?
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody to go to improtheater.com and find out about shows and classes that are coming up. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, Impro Theater School presents Tennessee Williams completely improvised plays in the style of Tennessee Williams, right here on this YouTube channel, directed by Tatiana Godfrey. And at 4:30 tomorrow, Love completely improvised plays in the style of contemporary romantic comedies. That's a school show directed by Maddie Goff. And there will be more classes online available very soon. I can tell you right now that the two that I know for sure are happening starting January 8th. Intro to Narrative Improv with Lisa Fredrickson. That is an 8-week class. And starting on January 16th, Core 1 or Physical Core with Tatiana Godfrey. Both of those are completely online, and you should sign up for them if you know it's good for you at improtheater.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Claire Sarah. Woo!
Gosh, I have to say, I love that lineup of classes. It's amazing what you guys provide for the people.
We have been working our improv teaching knuckles to the quick. No.
Nope.
Knuckles don't have quick.
Nope.
But kudos to Kirsten Farrell and Nick Clark at the beginning of the pandemic for getting us up and running with online shows within 2 weeks. It was crazy.
That's wow.
But Claire,
yeah,
that is not what I brought you here to talk about today.
The Sharpie is on.
I have So there's so many things to ask you about and to dive into. So can I start? Can we start at the very beginning?
That's a very fine place to start.
Ta-da! Um, you are a Scotlandier, which I think is the proper term.
Scoutlander. Yeah.
How long did you live in Scotland when you were a tot?
I lived my tot years there. I was 4 when my family immigrated to Canada, and I decided to toddle along with them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very generous of you. Do you have? I assume that you have lots of family still in Scotland and that you go back frequently.
I do. Not as frequently as I'd like, but I do keep in touch with me cousins. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it there.
And so you get to Canada. Did you feel? I mean, you're 4, so that you're probably quite adaptable. But did you feel a difference? Did you notice that things were different now in BC versus
Yeah,
Scotland?
I was pretty much being 4 most of that time. So um,
Okay.
I was the first one in my family to lose the accent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was teased about that by my brothers, but other than that, no, it just the 4. Okay, oh, that this is what life is.
This is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and what was the move? Were your folks just trying to get away from Scotland and all the tartan or something? Or what?
Yeah, they were a little offended by the itching wool. My dad started having a nether regions situation. No, it was actually my family's first yes and. My dad, I mean, they had a full family. They were in their late 30s. They had 3 children, and my dad just read this brochure about beautiful British Columbia and big and new opportunities and excitement, and it was simply an adventure.
That's exciting. That's so cool that they were willing to do that and
I
stuff.
know.
And do you think that everybody in the family was happy with having relocated, or did anybody in the family rebel and say, I'm going back to Scotland and you can't stop me?
Yeah, I don't know about rebelling. Well, I think my mom had the toughest transition, and so she would go back to Scotland probably every other year for a couple of months, and I would usually go with her, which was great. Sometimes the whole family would go, but my oldest brother did want to be a professional soccer player, football player.
Right.
So he did sort of make some moves to move back to Scotland and pursue professional football, which he never ended up fully doing, but that was as close to the moment of, oh no, we shouldn't have left Scotland because I'm going to lose my son. Who cares about my daughter? That's what she said. I'm going to lose my son.
Wow. Wow. That's and you're still wearing that. Um, so there you are in beautiful Northwest. Well, we call it the Northwest because we're down here. But you're in Vancouver proper, or were you?
No, they moved to. My dad got a job at this lumber mill. He was an electrician, and they were, the beautiful Northwest. They got to tear down those trees. So he got a job at a lumber mill in a tiny, tiny, not yet built town on Vancouver Island, which is off the coast of British Columbia. And he got it at we call it the North Ass tip of Vancouver Island. I mean, just like the middle of nowhere. And so my mom really went from we all went from a bustling city in Glasgow, which was very, very cosmopolitan, to like absolute wilderness. I'm not lying, bears and cougars in the backyard. Streets weren't finished. And so she did cry for the first year. And my dad then got a job closer to Vancouver, still up the coast a little bit in a small town. In British Columbia. And then I had pretty much an idyllic childhood there. I mean, we lived in a small town a few hours north of Vancouver on the coast. It was really lovely. I had a great childhood.
Did anybody in the family have a dialect or accent barrier? Were Vancouverians? Did they have a difficult
Right.
time understanding the Glaswegian
you know, Vancouver is a true melting pot, and there's so many Brits there. I mean, it's a Commonwealth country. I did not become a Canadian citizen until I was getting ready to move to the States. I just didn't need to be one because British citizenship gave me everything that Canadian citizenship kind of would have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't find any interesting conflict in my childhood to share.
Well, we're going to find that today, Claire.
Ah,
So were you when you were a tot, were you always putting on plays? Were
yes,
you writing stuff? What were you
yes.
doing as a tot in your performing arts, in your burgeoning performing artistry?
I never stopped. I wrote plays that I forced my friends to be part of. They call them now like whatever jukebox musicals or found,
Sure,
I
sure.
would use. I remember writing a play that I forced my friends to be in and I wrote the whole play around because I wanted to sing Mandy. Um,
That's a very Manilow song.
yeah, yeah.
You came and you gave without taking.
Come on, that is drama.
Uh,
And you
and
send me away,
yeah, yeah.
oh man. Yeah,
All right. So what other were they all Barry Manilow songs, or was it just jukebox, meaning like anything that was on top 40 radio was game for your
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Everything and anything on top 40. Yeah, so I staged a lot of musicals. I ended up, as I was growing up, I was in charge of my church youth group. And I mean, I'm sure I did that out of good intentions, but mostly I made them be in my plays. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, an artist needs to find like minds or minions
Or
uh,
millions.
to bring their ideas to life.
Yes.
You did it by hook or
Yes,
by
I
crook.
did.
Uh,
You know, I did all that. I was undeniably out as a dramatist in every sense of the word. And yet, when I graduated high school, it took me about 3 or 4 years before I committed to go to theater school. I was really afraid to do that. I was afraid to make the commitment to say, I'm an artist and I want to be an artist as a profession.
yeah, I share that with you. I was a kid actor, did a lot of plays as a kid, and then had really hard time admitting it as I was a teenager, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, did you do like like official school plays and things in middle
Yeah.
school or high school, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I do have I have an actual real wound from I did all the plays and choir drama. We had an improv team.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the first theater award of any nature I won was as an improviser for my school
Look at
in
that.
Surrey, which was
Nice.
cool. We had a great drama teacher, Harvey Ostroff, but and he and I have talked about this. The final play of my final year of high school was Romeo and Juliet, and I was like,
Wow.
well, thank you, everybody. I will take my high school Oscar now. Um, and he did not cast me as Juliet.
Wow.
It,
Wow.
it wrecked me. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it was like a scene from, I don't know, Gossip.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, I took that dagger. Yeah, I mean,
It's
I
just
took it so hard.
there wasn't enough poison. Wow, that is heartbreaking. And yet that probably made you stronger.
Did it? I don't know. I feel like I limped for a very long
Did you
time.
really?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really why I didn't go to school for theater for years because I just took that and I warped it in my brain to be like, well, if I'm not good enough to get the high school leading role, I'm not going to go audition for, proper.
So for a couple of years, you did the opposite of "I'll show them" or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And so you enrolled somewhere in
Eventually, yes.
yeah. What did you do right after high school?
Oh, I went to work for the RCMP.
You did.
I did.
What kind of work? Like administrative type of work, or were
Well,
you
it
training to
actually
be?
was a super fun job. I loved it. I started
You're
literally as
16,
well,
17?
right out of high school. I was 18.
Oh, 18. Okay.
Actually turned 18 working there. So I was
Could,
17 coming out of high school.
can you join the academy at that age, or
Uh,
was it a?
no, I worked in the office. I
Oh,
worked
okay.
for them. I
Okay.
worked for them. Yes, administrative. Yeah. And I loved it. It was super fun. Those guys are nuts.
That for those of you not too clear on Canadian initials, RCMP is Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Yeah.
Now, did that was that a substitute for the performing arts in any way, shape, or was there
No.
anything about that job that helped?
No, that was a complete, all right, I'm going over here. I'm going to be a normal person and I'm going to work in the normal world. I'm going to be a normal. Yeah.
How long did that last?
Not quite a year. And then I took a job with I think I've told you about this guy. Then I took a job with a really insane ex-vaudeville puppet master.
Mm.
And it was also great. It was so great. And he really was, he's nuts. He was crazy in such a good way. He was that kind of P.T. Barnum kind of guy, you know. He was really skilled as a puppeteer. He actually did a workshop that he used to brag about oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. Henson, the puppet.
Jim Henson.
Jim, good Lord. He did a workshop that Jim Henson came and attended, and then wrote him a note about how good he was. So we had that up in the puppet theater. But he got into puppetry because he did vaudeville as a very young man. His parents were London vaudevillians.
Wow.
So he grew up in that scene, and vaudeville went out of style, but it moved into puppetry. So he would just use all the same jokes, all the same gags, like Who's on First, he would just do with puppets. And
what were his puppets? Were they marionettes, or were they like hand puppets, or?
All of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did all of them. He did shadow puppets, marionettes, hand puppets. His hand puppets were exactly like the Muppets style, and I mean, really as good. He made beautiful puppets. He made magnificent sets. He had a workshop in his backyard, and he would create these elaborate sets that we would go out and we would do, you know, like all kinds of gigs. And he called himself very smartly the Canadian Folk Puppet Theater. So he would get hired for any kind of prestigious Canadian, you know, thing that had children in attendance, and he would amuse the children. And oh my gosh, I honestly, I do want to write this as a movie one day, the story of he and his wife. I'm actually writing a script right now, and I'm using him as the template for the main character.
Really? Because he was such an impresario. And
Impresario is the perfect word. And he's so charming and so quick on his feet. And his wife, you know, he would create these puppet sets, and his wife would stand out front, and he would work the puppets from behind. And he would just have all these like places where the puppets could come out, and his timing was perfect, and his comic timing, and his hand coordination. And his wife was, God bless her, just terrible, just absolutely, I mean, just not just bad at puppetry. And he made her this beautiful costume that had one of those, like it was a goose, so it had a fake arm over it, you know.
Right.
She could work the goose from here, and it would fall, like as she was talking, she would be talking to the kids, like waiting as the kids gathered before the puppet show started, and the head of the goose would just fall as her arm would, if she wouldn't be thinking about it, it would just look like it was dead and dangling, until she remembered she had a line for the goose that would pop up, and she would say, "Well, children, how is everyone today?" And the mouth would maybe move twice. And then and I am not exaggerating. And then you would hear from behind this beautiful puppet set, you'd hear, "Please, give me my cue." Just like,
Oh
give me my
man.
cue. And then you'd hear her say, there's not enough children here yet. Anyway, and so they would fight, husband and wife, and he would just start the show when he felt like starting the show, and then as soon as he started, it would just turn to magic. And anyway, it
And were you sort of like his business manager, agent person?
no, I mean, I was at that time like 19, 20. I was his gopher. You know, I helped build the
Sure.
puppets, I helped build the sets, and then I eventually moved up to be able to work the puppets, and then I moved up to being front of house, and then it was just me and him for for like a year, that that I took on his wife's role for and yeah, it was great.
I think the title of the book is Keep the Goose Alive. Uh,
Keep the
uh,
gooseneck high.
uh, well, that sounds fantastic. So that gave you a is he still around? Are they still around?
No, he's
Okay. And but so I mean, you're free to write the story, I guess.
Yeah.
And that gave you kind of like that kind of brought you back to maybe thinking.
It did. It did. I mean, obviously, I wanted back because I went and worked for a puppet guy. But that also felt like a roundabout, but it just totally, like, after being there for a little while, then I started doing local community theater as well, playing, doing a couple of plays. I did Pirates of Penzance, which was so much fun. And then by that time, and then, oh my gosh, well, this segues in.
Thank you.
So, you can edit all of the other stuff out.
Yeah, we'll edit this live show.
So just edit every other word, that'll speed it up. So all around this time, a friend of mine gave me a call and said, "Oh, you got to come see this show downtown Vancouver. These guys are really funny." And it's late at night. It's like 11:30 or whatever. I'm like, that sounds cool. So I go with him, James, and who later became a priest.
Oh,
I swear
James.
to God.
James.
Father James. He and the show was theater sports.
Vancouver Theater Sports League, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and we had to wait in line. I mean, it's Canada, it's freezing cold. We had to wait in line for at least 40 minutes outside. It was such a popular show. And then we went in, and I remember everything about that first show. And of course, Vancouver Theater Sports so this was like 1983. So it was Colin Mockery and Ryan Stiles, and all of the players were just magnificent. And I never laughed so hard, never felt so like, oh, I have to be part of this. I have to be a part of this. So I went a few times just as a fan. And then it was again my friend James, the priest to be, who was like, "Hey, they're doing classes. I want to take classes. Will you come with me? Help me be brave." And I'm like, "Yes, classes." So we went to improv classes with Richard Side. I don't know if you know Richard.
Oh, yes, I do know the delightful and pixie-like Richard Side.
Yeah.
And not the other Richard Side. There's apparently another Richard Side who I don't know and haven't met, but is, yeah.
The other side of Richard.
Nicely done.
Thank you. So I took classes from Richard Side and Michael Robinson. Did you ever know Michael?
I didn't know.
He ended up moving to New Zealand with a whole bunch of theater sports folks. A whole bunch of them moved to New Zealand. It's crazy. Anyway, and then I was hooked. That was it. I was hooked on theater sports. And around that time, I was like, okay, I'm a theater person. This is what I do. I called a woman who was in one of the shows and at that theater, and I said, "I want to be an actress. Can I meet you for lunch? How did you do it? What's it like?" Like I always test the waters.
Yes.
Look for mentors.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and so she was nice enough to meet me for lunch, and she just kind of told me her journey and the school that she went to, and so then I applied to that school, Langara College in Vancouver. Has a strong theater program, and then I was on my way, except at that college. I was probably 3 months in to college, and the dean, who also taught like one of our acting classes, pulled me aside and she said, you know, you've got real talent to be an actress. That's why you're here. But you got to get rid of that improv shtick.
You really do.
She's like,
That's not going to serve you at all.
That's what she said. And, you know, and I was like, what? And she said, I'm just saying, don't do that theater sports shtickety wop wop, or, you know, it's like, get here, be serious about the craft. And I was like, oh, wow, really? And I understood what she was saying. I'm not going to say she was wrong, you know, for diving down into some meaty acting. I had just spent the last 3 years doing vaudeville puppet shows,
Yeah,
and then theater sports. So I was humming at a high vibration, like
you really
off the
were.
top of my head.
Yeah.
Zippity-doo, 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 zippity-doo. So she was just trying to bring me down to my lower third, to, you know, access. That's a joke, not for your audience at all. But she wasn't wrong. But at the same, go ahead.
I was told the same thing at one point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and if I had wanted to be a serious actress, that would have been the right thing to do, I think. And you can always go back into improv. But at that same time, a theater company had come into Vancouver from Florida, and they had to hire 2 Canadians. They were doing a 6-month run in Vancouver, and they had to hire 2 Canadians, and I auditioned for them, and I was the one of the 2 Canadians that got hired. But it was improv that they did, street shows and improv. And so when I went to the dean to say I would need to leave a week early to do this gig, but it's a 6-month theater. Yeah, I mean, I was so sure she would say, well, okay, come back after the 6 months and pick up where you left off. And she's like, if you leave and go in with this sticky improv tacky ass theater group, then do not come back here. And so I did not go back there.
Wow, brave of her to say, take your money elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they don't do that anymore, do they?
No, they
But
wouldn't. I don't think.
it's a very real theater school. It's very prestigious. It's not, you know, it's a small, that's just why I chose it.
Yeah, I studied with Ron Van Loo, who's a legit theater guy. He was chair of Yale Theater, and he was chair of Tisch and at NYU. But when I studied with him, he just said, you know, you're very slick because of your improv training. You're very quick and kind of, you know, presentational, and we need to get into the emotion. So that's what he helped me do. And then the same thing happened again once I came to LA. I did it all over again with Sam Christensen. But it wasn't, they didn't need to shame me for doing improv or for being good at improv. They didn't need to say, yeah, it's one or the other, trombone or drums. You know, so anyway, but yeah, no offense to her. She's probably a very nice lady.
Well, and again, I honestly don't think she was wrong. I mean, I think she was asking me to make a choice, and I did make a choice, you know?
Yeah.
And I think she was also right that, I mean, because this became true for me later on too. I mean, improv does make you rev at a certain level. You know.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's the beauty of it, and I felt like, and I loved it, and I would not change that decision for anything. That was the right decision for me. I joined the SAC Theater company, and then I ended up moving to Florida and being part of their company, marrying my husband, making the best friends of my life with that theater, starting our own theater. I mean, it was the best. It was fantastic. I still don't think she was wrong. And I think there was like a sliding doors other path that if I had wanted to, I could have doubled down and been a serious actor. And, you know, I felt that when I did theater, theater sports, improv for almost 20 years, was it?
It was.
Was it? Was
Yeah.
it 20 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you ran the circus too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's be honest here.
Yes. Those were my monkeys. That was my circus. Yeah. And I loved it. And then when I moved into writing, we can talk more about the improv time, but when I moved into writing, I felt like I needed to stop improvising for a while to rev a little slower and a little deeper. Because I was so like all the scenes that I wrote for my screenplays ended with boom boom and scene.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just step back a little.
Take it down. No, I get it. I completely get it, because not only did I get that direction or redirection, but I took it and stopped doing improv for a couple of years in order to bring down the revolutions per second.
Right. Yeah.
And then, but the thing is, I guess if it appeared that I was bristling at her comments, it's just because I don't like people telling my Claire what to do. But no, I do think that an artist can have different. You can do different things. The same artist can do this kind of work and that kind of work. But I guess if you're 19 and you're enrolling in a program, it's sort of like a lot of conservatory programs ask you to not audition for professional jobs. Like,
Yeah.
they don't want you auditioning for a Twix commercial while you're, trying
Yeah.
to study Strindberg or something.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, they want to be able to like mold the clay that
Yeah.
is you.
Right.
So I get that. So there you are, in Vancouver, but weirdly doing a SAC theater touring show in Vancouver instead of doing Vancouver Theater Sports. Was it a truly street theater, or what? Or was it? What was that show? How did that show work?
Well, so that was the year. That was '86.
Oh, the World's Fair.
That was the World's Fair.
Yeah.
The Expo. Do they still do those?
You're asking the wrong.
Mike, could you find out? Do you have someone?
I know an expert
that
that you could.
would only tell you lies about it.
So World's Fair. So there were plenty of opportunities for performing, is what you're saying. It sounds like.
No, yeah. So SAC Theater was hired to be part of the World's Fair.
Right.
And so to go around the fair to different places, gather an audience out of the people that were there and put on a show. Those were audience participation shows, and they were scripted with a lot of improv, a lot of room for improv.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that was your gateway, and you end up moving. Did you move? How quickly did you move to Florida?
Well, so they came out in '86. Well, and I moved to Florida because of Will. So Will was a part of the troupe from Florida that came out to Canada, and we fell in love during Expo '86. And so, yeah. And so I married him and moved. He's from Florida. So I married him and moved to Florida. I didn't work for SAC when I first got to Florida.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I worked at SeaWorld.
Oh, SeaWorld even. Wow.
Yeah.
But you eventually find your way to SAC.
Yeah.
And you I imagine, like all the other Floridians who I've talked to about their world there of improv, you were doing hundreds of shows. It seems like everybody was doing dozens of shows a day.
Yeah.
At theme parks and or at the Comedy Warehouse and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So just amazing training ground for a person who's getting good at improv.
Yeah, major chops. You just get major chops there. And we were doing our shows, the same street theater shows at Disney. And then doing all kinds of things. SAC was involved in all kinds of and a lot of experiential, like being characters. We did all kinds of character work in the wild, where we would be hired to be nerds that would go to, like Ace Hardware booked a cruise for their people. And so they would hire us so Will and I did this, to be a couple who pretended to own an Ace Hardware franchise and take the cruise for 3 days. and just be ridiculous the whole time. Like just be complete nerds, dress weird, talk weird, be the first people to the buffet, be the first people on the dance floor, be icebreakers basically. And then at the end of the 3 days, do a little stand-up routine where we reveal that we're actually actors, you know.
I love
and
it.
some people would really be hurt and offended because they really related to the nerds.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you had to say like, no, we're actually quite sophisticated people.
Well, I don't know if I can pull that off, but yeah, that's
I remember
we did quite a few of those. It was
I-
very exciting.
I remember doing I did a couple of those like imposter like gigs, and weirdly did one not that many years ago, a very elaborate one that was heartbreaking in its what they were asking, you know, because by the time, so back in the late 80s, early 90s, when you do them, it's just you and whoever you're hired with, or maybe you're alone.
Yeah.
And maybe a handler walks up to you and whispers something in your ear like, hey, go over there to Dave and do a thing. But later with technology, I was doing them with an earpiece in, where they were telling me, you know, yes, yeah, it would get ugly sometimes.
Yeah.
But so all right, so you take the baton and lead a merry band of pranksters doing improv shows. Was it the youngster in you putting on plays and making your friends do all your plays, or did it feel more like okay, if this is going to happen, I have to run it? So
I think that actually came from because this was when we got let go from Disney and decided to open a an actual theater space in Orlando downtown. And we had already been doing some improv shows. We had a little group called the Mud Puppies, which was actually super fun. We were doing improv shows at a stand-up club. And when we decided to open our own theater, we all chatted about it, and it was because of my experience with theater sports, you know, and I felt so passionately about theater sports because Vancouver Theater Sports was so good. And I said, I would just love us to be a part of that franchise. It's great. I thought that the whole setup of theater sports was so great. And at the time, so because I knew the most of theater sports, I became the director of improv at our company for the first years, and sort of set the tone, which I took some of that from Vancouver and some of that from me. I really believed in and still do the yes and of improv, and just like where it can lead to. And I mean, all the things that we know about improv. I mean, I just went all in for all of that. Yes and, no blocking, no waffling, make the other people on stage look great. And then we also very much, our postmortems were always very important to us. And I ran them, and I wanted to run them with the tone of, it doesn't matter what happened. It matters how we feel about each other at the end of the show. And also, if you didn't fail at least once during the show, you know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just relying on old bits.
Yeah, you're not taking big enough swings.
So we really encouraged each other to, you know, to step out at least once a show and just make a giant fool of yourself, and take a chance and take a risk, and very much encourage, you know, just jumping up there, even if you don't have an idea. If your friend is flailing about on stage, just jump up there and stand next to them, hold their hand, and we'll bring the lights down. But that's really what I wanted to nurture, was that, you know, we're in this together. This is not stand up. This is improv. The whole team survives, or the whole team sinks. And it's just as awesome if we sink. It is awesome. That's what I want to see as a director. I want to see some sinking. It was kind of a glorious time. And we did do 3 shows a night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then we did like bohemian night on Tuesdays, and it was great.
I remember back in those days, seeing groups that would literally repeat things that had happened in previous shows, and you could see it so clearly that things were, and I remember with my gang back in Wisconsin, kind of being like, we are never going to be a group that tries to repeat something, like it was just like, it just seemed so, it just seemed like such a waste of time to try to repeat,
Yes.
something.
I know. And I think that too, like when I first met you out on the improv circuit, I think that's why we connected so much. Like we both had the same respect and not taking it all too seriously for
Yeah.
the actual craft of improv, and
Yeah.
it being a philosophy of life, it being a worldview that we shared, which is why
Yeah.
I think we hit it off, like as performers and friends. It's like, yeah, okay, we both get this in the same way. It like hit the same spot for us.
Yeah. I think we met in 92, maybe. Does that sound about right? Was House Full of Honkies around in 92?
No, we didn't exist till like 96 or 97.
So I met you prior, so I met you before that with
Yeah.
I think Jonathan Mangan and Joel McCrary.
Was that in Montreal?
In Montreal
Okay.
at Just for
Yeah,
Laughs.
Montreal. That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that year or the next year, we all met. I got to finally meet Richard Side and Jerry McTeer and Lyle Moon and Roman Danilo and Ellie Harvey and
Was
Gary
that Montreal
Jones.
again, or was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was.
Yeah. And Gary Jones was just here on this show recently, and
Oh.
cracking wise. So you, during that time when you've got your group and you're performing so much and teaching and etc., were you already thinking of like, oh, there's something going on in Los Angeles, maybe there's something happening there, or was it like, this is great, this is what I'm going to do? Did you have like an inkling of I don't know, Hollywood or television or something like that?
I don't think well, I guess it just sort of seeped in. For a while, it was like, no, this is it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to create this theater and do it forever. But at that age too, it's like forever is 3 months later. It's like, wow, well, we did that forever. So, and then I do remember that I can't remember the order of things, but I remember Dan Patterson came to one of our shows and started encouraging people towards, auditioning for Whose Line of Things in Los Angeles. I don't think he did auditions in Orlando. I don't remember. I could be wrong. But so then there's sort of like, oh, improv is happening big time on television. Improv is moving to television. That's going to happen in Los Angeles. So there was just just natural cracks. Like we'd just been doing this for a few years, like nonstop. And Wayne Brady, who was part of our group, went off to Japan, I think. I forget or Vegas. And then Matt Young started Dad's Garage Theater in Atlanta. And Dano got married and moved to New York. And Jonathan decided to hop off to Los Angeles and seek his fortune, Jonathan Mangum. So we were starting to lose that was our main group at that time.
Yeah.
And then Joel moved out to Los Angeles. And so we were all kind of, our main group, the group that later became House Full of Honkies, were sort of separated at that time. And Will and I were still in Orlando. I'm not really thinking about Los Angeles at all at that time. And then that's when Dano was getting married. So he had moved to New York, and then he had the wedding, and he invited us all to the wedding. And so we all came. So Joel and Jonathan came from Los Angeles. Matt came from Atlanta. We came up from Florida, and we all rented a van too. So we met at the airport, rented a van, went to the wedding, had such a great weekend together, that on the van on the way back from Dano's wedding to the airport, we made a pact that we'd all be in LA by the end of the year.
Wow.
We were.
That is fantastic. I thought you were going to say you were on your way back to the airport and you got a flat and then you had to, wow, that is, I never knew that story. I never knew that. Made a pact.
It was was almost supernatural. It was a 3 hour tour, and we just we just were all so in love with each other, and we hadn't been together for so long, and just like, so partially it was just like the love vibes. We're just like, oh, we need each other, and Joel and Jonathan were struggling like in Los Angeles, not so much as actors, but as souls. Like, what LA? And I don't know. It just was like we just had such a great time, and then it just kind of moved to this. Let's make a pact. And like this little. I can't tell you how naked and how much blood was shared for this.
Yeah, but that's just. I mean, people know about pacts, I think.
Right. People know about pacts.
So we're now I'm gonna have to jump around a little bit because so you and Will find yourselves in Los Angeles, and you personally are doing House Full of Honkies, doing improv with House Full of Honkies, and but you're also writing. You start writing.
No.
You hadn't started writing.
No.
How long did that take?
That took a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that, I mean, I loved doing our shows with House Full of Honkies. I loved doing all that. A friend of ours, Carrie Kirkpatrick, who was already an established screenwriter, wanted to do a pilot with us, a television pilot, which we ended up doing for ABC. But in the sort of writing of that, Carrie and I hit it off writer-wise. And that was when I started realizing like I didn't really like auditioning for sitcoms and commercials, and I just didn't. But I liked writing, like I still do. I just never got tired of that. Like I got tired of the other stuff. And House of Honkies seemed to come to its natural end, and I was already writing with Carrie by that time. He kind of hired me to be his writing assistant. And he had just come off of doing Chicken Run and James and the Giant Peach. So he was in the world of animation. And so I just kind of segued out of improv and into writing. And that was also when I went to Romania on this 2-week writer's trip. And I was literally on a train going through the Carpathian Mountains at midnight. And this inner voice just totally said to me, it's time to, and I could hear the rhythm of the train, and yeah. I could see the moon through this tiny window. It was like an old, rusty old train. And it was very vampire-y and cool. And I could hear the rhythm of the train, and it literally, the voice was like, you need to slow the rhythm of your brain and take writing seriously. And I was like, okay. So I came home from that trip and told the Honkies that I too was moving out of improv and gonna go seriously into screenwriting. And so I dove in then. I don't even know what year that was, like 99, 2000. That's when I dove in all in on writing.
Did you when you had that realization on the midnight train in Romania, which is, I mean, come on, that's amazing. Did you were you cognizant of the similarity to the acting school person talking to you?
I didn't put it together that trip. I didn't put it together that trip. I mean, and I was bothered by the voice at first. Like I was excited, but then I was bothered by it because but I'm an improviser. That's been my whole, that's who I am in my head. That's who I am to everybody else. That's so my identity. So that's completely my identity. I have been improvising since I was 17 and doing it full time as a living for 20 years. To not be an improviser, that feels like betrayal. it didn't feel great, so it took me a while to put it all together. And yeah, it took me a while
That's
to miss it too, I have to say, because then writing used up every bit of creative juice that I had to give it. And then I did start to miss performing, and I turned to improv a few times. Like, can you guys
you're not one to take things lightly, so it's not surprising that you would dive in with both feet and go deep with it
yes.
and
Yeah.
not have any energy left to miss something or doing. But you end up doing you end up writing a lot and having success with it and being a mentor to kids in writing and that sort of thing, which we'll get to in a second. What was Pie and Burger like? Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Well, Pie Burger came out of an initiative that came through a faith-based company. They were looking to do short films that were not heavy-handed, and I have fairly light hands. So I just wrote a script for them and submitted it to this competition. That was it was great. It was a $60,000 budget to do a short film for the winner of the contest, and it was a Peter Glenville foundation behind it, and he was a director. Gosh, I'm not going to remember this now either. But he was a British director, and he did some like major big films with major old British stars, like what is the name of his big movie? I can't remember it. We'll IMDb that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah. I should interrupt and say that if you when we talk about expertise, the podcast, you will hear Claire and co-host Dan O'Sullivan say, "We'll put it in the show notes." It'll be in the show notes. He directed The Innocents, Turn of the Screw, Romeo and Juliet. Speaking of Romeo and Juliet,
That's right.
Separate Tables, A Hotel Paradiso, The Prisoner.
Yeah.
None of these are ringing a bell to you?
Yes. Yeah. No. Yes.
So okay, wow. That's kind of that's an auspicious. I mean, that's a very exciting person to have
Yeah.
who to be involved with.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great opportunity, and so my script won the competition, and so I got money, a budget to, and then I asked if I could direct it, which I was nervous to do, but I did it. And then I really enjoyed the experience actually of directing it. I sometimes wish I did more of that, but I don't know.
You will, Claire.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
You'll be on, I don't know, maybe an airplane and you'll hear a voice. I don't know. You'll be on some mode of you'll be in some mode of transportation and you'll notice through the window some natural thing like a cloud or the sun or lightning,
Right.
and then you'll hear a voice. So you end up doing some acting anyway.
Yeah.
And did you get to, you were in The Princess Diaries 1 and 2.
I was.
And tell me about I mean, those are big movies. You've got.
It's so funny and so odd.
What was it like? Did you do the regular audition process like any old random actor, or did somebody tap you on the shoulder?
I told you I stopped auditioning. I didn't like it. No, this was like such a fairy tale. I'm trying to find dark conflict.
Look at that.
To share with
It's a fairy tale.
Yeah, it was a fairy tale. House Full of Honkies, we were doing a show at Gary Marshall's theater in Burbank.
Formerly the Falcon, now the Gary Marshall Theater in Burbank / Toluca Lake.
Correct. And Gary Marshall, the wonderful director and writer. And Gary, who was just such a mensch. So we did a couple of our plays there, and we would do improv after the play, and improv, we would do the play, and then we would do an improv show. and he came over and watched one of our improv shows, and I was doing a Scottish character. I shouldn't even say I was doing a Scottish character. I was doing a Scottish accent in a
Sure.
scene.
Sure.
And he was so tickled by it that he called me up and told me he wanted to put me in Princess Diaries as a Scottish character. So he sent me the script, and he saw Joel McCrary in that show also, and wanted to cast Joel in the play. And I mean, in the movie, whatever form.
It's a play on film, so sure, it's a movie.
Everything's a play. So he invited us to the table read, and I saw that Joel had a few lines, and there was just nothing. I did not, myself as a character did not exist. Then he would just kind of nudge me and say, "You'll do some improv here, and we're gonna bring you on here, and I'm gonna add a scene here where you just we'll set you up, and you'll say something, you'll come up with the funny." So
That is delightful.
it was delightful. It was also a little nerve-wracking, but kind of in a fun way, because honestly, I showed up, I got, my date. It's like, you got to be on set on this day, go to hair and makeup, blah, blah, blah. There were no sides. I had no idea what we were shooting or what we were doing.
Sides for the uninitiated, sides would be basically a script and or directions for how the shooting day is going to go, so that you arrive on set and you know what to expect.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, this wasn't an improvised movie. It's like not Christopher Guest, where it's like everyone else had lines and pages of scripts that, and it's a big major motion picture and a beautiful set that was built, and neither Joel nor I really knew what we would be doing. And it was just so much fun. It was the first scene that we shot was the dinner scene that's in Princess Diaries, where Anne Hathaway's character it's her first time in public learning how to be a princess at a dinner setting. And so Julie Andrews was there, and Anne Hathaway wasn't Anne Hathaway. She was just a sweet, sweet young woman who loved improv. So whenever Gary would ask Joel and I to improvise some dialogue and put these giant cameras on us to do it, she would just be, on the side watching. She's just a cool little chick. So it was a hoot. I felt like I was just continuing my little improv time, but now on the set at Disney.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was great. Yeah. My favorite thing, I've told this story too many times, but in Princess Diaries 2, we were doing like this ballroom scene, and because I knew Gary Marshall so well by then, the waiter came up and offered my character some canapes, and so I just licked one, didn't like it, and put it back, and which was not in the script, I never ever had a script. And Gary laughed out loud and said cut, and then stopped the scene, switched the lights and the cameras, and gave me like 3 minutes to just improvise that bit. And this is my favorite part of this story. The wonderful Chris Pine, who was the romantic interest for the princess in that movie, asked me, he's like, because Gary cleared everyone else, it didn't need to be, it was just a couple of people and me and the waiter. And Chris Pine was like, would you mind if I stayed and watched you? Because your timing is so impeccable. Get out of here. Come back when you've done Star Trek. That was kind of fun.
That's great. I love it. And that didn't, I take it, make you want to just say like, oh, I'm going to do more acting. I just want to do more acting, because you are already writing. And
No, Mike, it's kind of funny. I had fallen in love so deeply with writing.
Yeah.
That in fact, Gary did another movie. I still sometimes maybe regret this. I have a tough time regretting things because there's so many other things that come from stuff that feels like a bad decision. But
Yeah.
I got a call to audition for another movie that he was making, and I had a deadline. I was working on a movie for Universal, and I told them I couldn't make it because I thought, oh, even if I got this, and Gary would probably find something for me, then I knew when it was shooting, and I knew that my second draft would be due, and I didn't even go to the audition. So I mean that in hindsight too, it just clearly told me, it's like, okay, I see so clearly where your priorities have gone. Yeah. So no.
It makes sense though. You know,
Yeah,
you went all in.
I did go all in. And then you know where I get my juice from, because I do like performing more than acting. And where I get my performance juice from is hosting the Bright Girl events.
Of course, here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Right Girl Los Angeles is a fantastic organization, and Karen Taylor is the, I believe, CEO, executive director.
Yeah, founder, CEO, yeah.
And can you just tell, because you've had me, myself, and a few of our mutual friends on as persons performing or reading the scripts that some of the kids write. But can you give us the 10-cent tour of Right Girl? It's an amazing organization.
It is amazing. Well, and Karen had the idea for it, 21 years ago. This is our 21st season. So basically what she does is she matches at-risk girls in Los Angeles between 13 and 18. And that's widened to be any teen girl, because we have decided that every teen girl is at risk anymore. But when it started, it was very much focused on inner city at-risk girls. And she matches a girl with a professional female writer. And we so it's for the school, it's between November and May, basically. And then once a week, you get together with that girl. You meet at a local cafe or the library or wherever, and you just write together for an hour. It's not really about counseling, or it's not big sister program. You get together and you're right. Sometimes, and you can do it any way that works for you and your mentee. And of course, they're going to ask you questions about writing, and you sort of explore different genres of writing together, do some writing experiments with each other. But it's very much focused on writing. And so you have all these, and now it's like, I think this year we have over 100 girls. So you have these girls that are meeting up with professional female writers all over Los Angeles and expanding the writing. And then once a month, between November and May or June, we do a workshop with all the girls and all the mentors coming together. And each month is focused on a different genre of writing.
So cool.
It is pretty cool. And when Karen told me the idea, when she was just creating it, I was 100% on board, because as I've shared with you, I have been mentored so well all through my life, and it has absolutely made my careers much better, much richer, and much easier to navigate. So I do mentor whenever I get the chance. So yeah.
For information on Right Girl, go to rightgirl.org. It is really a fantastic organization. At a couple of the events that I've been lucky enough to be part of, I can't believe, because the different mentors and other guests that show up at these things sometimes will get up and speak. I mean, just kind of informally, and they'll say like, "Oh, I'm so and so, CEO of XYZ Corporation," or like I'm the director of new talent development at CBS, or like these amazing women get involved in this organization because its mission is so honorable and terrific.
Yeah, in fact, I think you were at the workshop where the screenwriting workshop where Nancy Myers came in and gave her afternoon for it, which was like that was such a fun workshop. You and Ryan Smith, that was a super fun. That was an extra fun workshop to me. Yeah, and of course we're so proud this year, because one of our mentees went on to become the inaugural poet laureate of Amanda Gorman. and she's just been a great spokesperson for Right Girl, as well as an amazing young woman in her own life. But she came to us when she was about 14, and she had her little speech impediment, and she was just a spitfire. I remember the first time I met her, she's like really something. Like she's just really got a fire about her, like no one else. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Also,
cool.
I remember, I think I might have even been one of the 1 million people who texted you seeing her speak at the inauguration and said like, oh my God, it's a Right Girl person.
No, there were not that many that did. I thought that was so cool that you did. Yeah, yeah. I know. It was so thrilling, just thrilling. And she's such a good, she believes in mentoring and is very outspoken about it. And she's just been asked to do, well, I can't say it. I'm not allowed to say, but anyway, she's mentoring herself right now.
But it is Princess Diaries 3.
Yeah.
Maybe what it is. I might have just let the cat out of the bag. So there is a podcast called Expertise, spelled wrong, and from the minds of Claire, Sarah, and Dan O'Sullivan. And the conceit, well, you're sort of led down this path thinking that you're going to learn something about something from an expert. And after you listen to half a dozen episodes, maybe like I got to the 8th episode and I realized, wait a minute, each episode, either Dano or Claire claims to be an expert, and they can't possibly be an expert on all these things. So I think what's happening is that you and Dano are like reading something about lighthouses or the printing press or other things, and then like just recording and pretending you're an expert. So I'm here sort of to call your bluff, is what I'm saying on this thing.
In the buff.
The one thing I will say about Expertise, spelled wrong, is it's available at wherever you get your podcasts. It's two things I'll say about it. First of all, the episodes are bite-sized, so you're not sitting there being expected to pay attention to a podcast for an hour.
Thank you.
But also the conceit is that one of you phones up the other one to do the expert interview, and because it's Claire, none of you, if those of you who don't know Dano or Claire, just trust me, because it's Dano and Claire, they have insisted on having a recorded their human voices making a beeping sound throughout the podcasts, as though it were the phone recording warning telling the person that they are being recorded.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to upset someone's privacy. Like, it's all very, we don't even, this is the dumbest thing. And this is why I love Dan O'Sullivan so much. He literally called me like in July or August, and he was like, let's just play the experts game and make a podcast of it. And I was like, I would love to do that, but I'm kind of busy. He's like, I'll do everything. And I'll just, we'll just do a Zoom basically once a week. And like he was like, no rules, only fun. And I'm like, I am all in. And so there's no rules. This podcast makes no sense because we are both all like the other expert. We don't tell the other person so there's no reading.
Yeah.
You can't do,
there's no prep.
It's not like the drunk history where they read it and it's like, no, it's like whatever word pops out, lighthouse, double-breasted suit, John Denver, whatever. It's like, you are now an expert on that. And we both agreed that to just make up facts, it doesn't matter how close or how far off they are.
There's one, I don't remember which episode because I listened to all of them in just a couple of days, but I don't remember which one, but there's one where you're trying to wrap it up. So you say like, okay, Dano, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about this. And then he was like, all right, great. My character is going to keep on talking. So he keeps on talking. And then in the post-production, he took that comment of yours, thanks for, your wrap-up comment. And then he replays it several times. It's very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes. Yeah. It's a delight. And that is my improv Jones. There's always something that comes in to help me keep that part of my brain going, which is, it's just so much fun. It's just play.
It's like an angel on your shoulder. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell us, is it different writing a screenplay where you know that real live adult human people are going to be on screen talking? I'm doing puppet hands.
You're doing good.
As opposed to animated writing? Is there a difference, or is it just what's the story, who's the audience?
No, there is not much of a difference. The development is very different, but the story itself, no, it's not different. It's all the same. Like, what does this character want? What is real to this character? What is real in this world? Even if we are making up this world, what are the rules of this world? But which is also true for live action. It's like, is this heightened reality? Is this gritty reality? What do they want? Why can't they have it? What are they like? What are they like in secret? That's all the same for animation as it is for live action. Yeah, it's the same.
We're about out of time, but before we go, I want to say that Claire Sarah is a mentor, a writer, an actor, an improviser.
All the oars.
Expertise is the podcast. The Drew Barrymore, Adam Sandler film Blended is out of Claire's brain. Ghost Stories coming up. I don't know about Ghost Stories.
Oh, that's the Irish film.
Yes, I read a little bit about Powers Court Pictures. Is that?
Yeah, we have 2 films that we are hoping to get made over the next year and a half. So we'll see.
And of course, Smallfoot, and you worked with Channing Tatum, which must have been.
I worked in a little voice booth alone with Channing Tatum for a year.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Because you're so good at mentoring and teaching and that sort of thing, I always ask guests, do you have thoughts, advice, counsel that you can encapsulate for a person who feels maybe like, and this is your experience as well as mine, you feel like you're a creative person, you're an artistic person, but then you also feel like I should do this. Like, what's your advice for somebody who's like, oh, I'm supposed to be a doctor, but I'm also a creative person, or something like that? Do you have any thoughts about scratching that itch? And
well, if you're a doctor, yeah, I think my advice is the same as my philosophy for everything. It's like, talk to other people who have that same itch. Talk to people who've already scratched that itch, like I did with the actress in Vancouver. Call people. People are so willing to share what they've been through. People enjoy that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who are more successful or who are just doing something that you think that you might like to do, and ask them, what's it like in the day-to-day? How did you get there? How did you do it? Look for mentors. But even not somebody necessarily who's going to be a full-time mentor for you, but just to have a coffee with someone, get lots of stories from other people who are out there doing what you think you might want to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Claire Sarah, thank you so much for being on
this
the
was
show.
A joy just to spend time with you.
Same here. I'm sorry that Will and Roxy weren't able to jump on screen.
They are not allowed.
I would have welcomed them both. Claire and I want to thank Ian Carroll, our OBS operator, for keeping this show on the live stream, and Doc Farrell Salmon Reigold for being our YouTube chat moderator. Thank you both. And for more information and future things about Claire, watch this space. Look for Ghost Stories in a movie theater or streaming service sometime in the not too distant future. And for more information about Impro, etc., improtheater.org. Thank you so much. .com. Oh my gosh. I got the website.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire.
Your own place.
We'll edit that out.
Get a mentor, Mike.